Wait, did you hear that sound?
A 7-year-old girl in a white dress stopped 6 Hells Angels in a Minnesota parking lot and asked one question that made them freeze. "Wait, do you hear that sound?" And when Iverson Iron Callahan knelt down to listen, what they found hidden in a storm drain 30 feet away was a 3-year-old boy who'd been missing for 18 hours, kidnapped by a gang trying to force his federal prosecutor father to drop charges. What Meredith heard that no adult noticed saved Philip's life, but it also made her a target, because the West Side crew doesn't leave witnesses alive. And now a little girl who listened when everyone else walked away had to be silenced before she could testify. Before we dive into this story of a 7-year-old girl who stopped 6 Hells Angels in a Minnesota parking lot, tell me, where are you watching this from right now? Drop your city in the comments below. And if you believe that the most powerful thing you can do is listen when everyone else ignores, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get into the story. Saturday afternoon in St. Paul, Minnesota, hit different when you were counting pennies at a hardware store. Jennifer Webb stood in the plumbing aisle of the B&Q on University Avenue, staring at 3 different types of faucet washers like they held the secrets of the universe, trying to remember which one would stop the leak in her kitchen sink without costing more than she could afford. $23.47 in her checking account. Payday wasn't until Tuesday. The washer cost $4.19 plus tax. That left enough for gas to get to work and maybe a box of mac and cheese for dinner. This was life 2 years after Marcus died. This was widowhood at 34, with a 7-year-old daughter and a job as a home health aide that paid just enough to keep them housed, but not enough to keep them whole. No life insurance, because they'd been young and invincible and planning to get it next year. No savings, because construction work was seasonal and medical bills from Marcus's last 3 weeks in the hospital had eaten everything. Just Jennifer, Meredith, and the perpetual mathematics of survival. "Mommy, this one." Meredith appeared beside her, holding up a package of rubber washers. 7 years old, blonde hair in a ponytail that Jennifer had managed to braid despite being awake for 22 hours straight after pulling a double shift. Wearing a white dress from Goodwill that was too big but clean, white tights with a small hole near the ankle, and shoes that would need replacing in a month she couldn't afford. "How'd you know which one?" Jennifer asked, too tired to question miracles. "The picture on the package matches the thing under our sink. I looked this morning." Of course she had. Meredith noticed everything the kind of child teachers called observant when they were being kind and intense when they weren't. The kind who heard conversations 3 rooms away, who remembered every detail of every story, who asked questions that made adults uncomfortable because the answers required honesty most people didn't want to give. Jennifer took the package, checked the price, $3.99, even cheaper than she'd hoped, and felt the small victory that came from staying under budget. "Good eye, baby, let's check out." They walked toward the front of the store, passing aisles of power tools Jennifer couldn't afford, paint colors for walls she didn't have time to paint, and families who looked like they belonged in a world where hardware stores were for projects, not survival. The parking lot outside was typical for a Saturday: SUVs, minivans, a few pickup trucks hauling lumber, people loading purchases, kids complaining about being bored. The ordinary chaos of suburban Minnesota life. Then the sound hit. Not loud at first, just a rumble. Low, growing. The kind of sound you felt in your chest before you heard it with your ears. 6 motorcycles pulled into the parking lot in perfect formation. Harley-Davidsons, chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun, engines growling like caged thunder. The riders wore black leather vests covered in patches, sunglasses that hid their eyes, and expressions that suggested they didn't care what anyone thought about them. Hells Angels. The patches on their backs said it clearly. Minnesota chapter. The death head logo that made suburban shoppers grip their children tighter and pretend not to stare while absolutely staring. The bikes parked near the entrance, engines cutting off one by one until silence returned, or what passed for silence after that much noise. 6 men dismounted. Big men, tattooed, scarred, the kind who looked like they'd seen things most Americans only watched on the news. Shoppers reacted predictably. A woman pulled her daughter behind her. A man grabbed his son's hand and steered him away. An elderly couple turned and walked back into the store like they'd forgotten something. Fear, assumptions, the immediate judgment that came from leather and ink and motorcycles. But Meredith didn't flinch. She stood in the automatic doorway, package of washers in her hand, watching the bikers with the same careful attention she gave everything else. Not scared, just curious, processing. Jennifer reached for her. "Meredith, come on, let's go." But Meredith wasn't moving. Her head tilted slightly, her eyes unfocused the way they did when she was listening to something distant. "Baby, what?" "Shh." Meredith held up one small hand. "Do you hear that?" Jennifer listened, heard nothing but traffic on University Avenue, distant conversations, shopping carts, rattling. "Hear what?" "That sound." Meredith's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's crying." "Honey, there's no—" But Meredith was already walking, not toward the car, toward the bikers. Jennifer's heart seized. "Meredith, no. Stay away from—" Her daughter ignored her, walked right up to the largest biker, 6'5", easily, arms covered in military tattoos, face weathered by sun and years, wearing a vest that said President across the back and Iverson across the front. And Meredith tugged his leather vest with her small hand. The biker looked down. His expression behind the sunglasses was unreadable. "Wait," Meredith said, voice clear despite her size, despite the fact that she was addressing a man 3 times her weight, who most adults crossed the street to avoid. "Do you hear that sound?" Iverson Iron Callahan had survived 2 tours in Afghanistan, 3 bar fights that should have killed him, and a motorcycle accident on Highway 94 that left his Harley in pieces, but him somehow walking away. He'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now his instincts were telling him that this 7-year-old girl tugging his vest wasn't playing games. The kid's eyes were focused on something beyond him, beyond the parking lot, listening with an intensity that reminded him of soldiers on patrol who'd learned to hear IEDs before they detonated. Iverson removed his sunglasses and knelt down, putting himself at her eye level the way his old platoon sergeant had taught him to approach frightened civilians in Kandahar. "What's your name, sweetheart?" His voice came out gentler than most people expected from a man his size. "Meredith." She didn't look at him, still listening. "What sound are you hearing, Meredith?" "Crying. It's faint, but it's there." She pointed toward the edge of the parking lot, past the shopping carts, toward where the asphalt met a grassy slope that led down to a drainage culvert. "Over there!" Jennifer finally caught up, breathless and terrified. "I'm so sorry, she didn't mean to bother you, we're just leaving." Iverson held up one scarred hand. "Ma'am, your daughter says she hears crying." "That true?" Jennifer's face flushed. She has an active imagination. "I'm sorry, we'll go." "Mommy, I'm not making it up." Meredith's voice cracked with frustration. "Why doesn't anyone ever believe me?" The other 5 bikers had dismounted now, watching. Bear Iverson's VP, former Marine, 6'4" and built like his nickname suggested, approached. "Boss?" Iverson stood, never taking his eyes off the direction Meredith had pointed. "You hear anything?" Bear listened, shook his head. "Traffic, birds, nothing else." But Iverson remembered Afghanistan, remembered a local boy who'd warned them about a sniper nobody else had seen. Remembered ignoring the kid because he was small, and how could a child know what grown soldiers missed? Remembered Martinez dying 3 minutes later when that sniper fired. He'd promised himself after Martinez, never ignore the small voices. Wrench, chains. "With me." Iverson started walking toward the culvert. "Rest of you, perimeter." Jennifer grabbed Meredith's hand. "Sir, really, You don't have to. Ma'am, if your daughter's wrong, we waste 5 minutes. If she's right, Iverson's jaw tightened. Then someone needs help, and we're the ones who showed up. They crossed the parking lot, boots heavy on asphalt, drawing stares from shoppers who definitely weren't used to seeing Hell's Angels investigating drainage ditches. The culvert was concrete, maybe 4 feet in diameter, partially hidden by overgrown grass. Storm runoff during Minnesota's brutal springs, dry most of the year. Iverson knelt at the entrance and listened. For 10 seconds, nothing. Then faint, so faint he almost missed it, a sound. Weak, broken, crying. His blood went cold. Wrench heard it too. Jesus Christ, there's someone in there. Iverson pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it into the culvert. 20 feet back, barely visible in the darkness, something moved, small, huddled, a child, maybe 3 years old, blonde hair matted with dirt, face streaked with tears and blood, wearing pajamas that said he'd been there a long time. The boy's eyes reflected the flashlight like an animal caught in headlights, terrified, barely conscious, dying. Iverson's combat medic training kicked in instantly. Chains, call 911. Tell them we have a missing child, possible abduction, critical condition. Bear, crowd control, keep civilian back. Wrench, with me. He handed his phone to Wrench and crawled into the culvert, the concrete scraping his shoulders, the smell of decay and fear filling his lungs. Behind him, in the parking lot, Meredith stood holding her mother's hand, watching 6 Hell's Angels mobilize with military precision to save a life nobody else knew was dying. Because she'd heard what adults had missed, and for the first time in 2 years, Jennifer Webb realized that maybe, just maybe, her daughter's gift for noticing things wasn't a burden, it was a superpower. The first police cruiser arrived in 4 minutes, the ambulance in 6. By minute 8, the B&Q parking lot had transformed into a crime scene with yellow tape, flashing lights, and a crowd of shoppers who'd come out to watch Minnesota's most unlikely rescue unfold. Iverson crawled backward out of the culvert, cradling a 3-year-old boy who barely weighed 30 pounds and should have weighed 40. The child was unconscious now, breathing shallow, lips cracked from dehydration. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, broken. Bruises covered his face and neck. This wasn't an accident. This was violence. Paramedics rushed forward with a stretcher. Iverson laid the boy down gently, the way he'd laid down wounded Marines in Helmand Province, and stepped back to let professionals work. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. "Vitals are weak," one paramedic called out. "Severe dehydration, possible internal injuries. We need to move now." As they loaded the child into the ambulance, a street-Paul police sergeant approached Iverson, 40-something, weathered face, name tag reading Kowalski, eyes that had seen enough to recognize when civilians had just done something extraordinary. "You're the one who found him?" "The girl found him." Iverson nodded toward Meredith, who stood with Jennifer near the storefront, watching everything with those 2 observant eyes. "We just crawled in." Kowalski pulled out a notepad. "The kid say anything?" "Never regained consciousness. But Sergeant, this wasn't an accident. Someone put him there. The bruising, the broken arm, that's abuse, maybe worse." Kowalski's expression darkened. "We've got a bolo out right now. 3-year-old reported missing 18 hours ago from northeast Minneapolis. Philip Graves. Parents are Assistant U.S. Attorney David Graves and his wife Rebecca." Iverson's stomach dropped. "Federal prosecutor?" "Yeah. Currently prosecuting the West Side crew on RICO charges. Trial starts Monday." The pieces fell into place instantly. This wasn't random. This was leverage. The West Side crew had kidnapped a prosecutor's kid to force him to drop charges. And when the plan failed, when the father didn't break, they dumped Philip in a culvert to die. Evidence destroyed. Message sent. Kowalski saw Iverson's face change. "You thinking what I'm thinking? That whoever put that boy there is going to be real interested in eliminating witnesses?" Iverson looked at Meredith again. Yeah, I'm thinking that. By the time the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, lights flashing, carrying Philip toward Regions Hospital, where his parents were already being notified, local news vans had arrived. Channel 5, Channel 11, a reporter from the Pioneer Press. The story was too good to ignore. Hell's Angels rescue kidnapped toddler thanks to 7-year-old girl's hearing. Jennifer tried to leave, pulling Meredith toward their ancient Honda Civic that had seen better decades. But a reporter intercepted them. "Mom, is this your daughter? The one who heard the crying?" Jennifer's face went pale. "We really need to go. Just a quick statement. America loves hero stories." The reporter thrust a microphone at Meredith. "Sweetheart, how did you know the boy was there?" Meredith looked at the camera with the brutal honesty only children possess. "I heard him crying, but nobody believed me until the bikers did." The reporter ate it up. "And you weren't scared of the motorcycles?" "Why would I be? They listened when everybody else didn't. That soundbite would play on every news station in Minnesota by 6 p.m. and hit national news by morning." Jennifer finally got Meredith to the car, hands trembling as she fumbled with keys. Bear appeared beside her driver's window, silent, massive, holding a business card. "Ma'am, you're gonna want this." Jennifer took it. Plain white card. Phone number. Nothing else. "What is this?" "Protection. Your daughter just became a witness in a federal case, and the people who took that boy?" Bear's voice dropped. "They don't leave witnesses alive." Jennifer's hands went numb. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to call that number tonight, because tomorrow morning, when the West Side crew watches the news and sees your daughter's face, they're going to want to make sure she can't testify." Bear stepped back, letting Jennifer process. Then he added one more thing. "Iverson doesn't abandon people who save lives. You call that number, we'll handle the rest." He walked away, leaving Jennifer sitting in a car that barely ran with a daughter who'd just painted a target on both their backs by being brave enough to speak up. And for the first time since Marcus died, Jennifer understood that poverty wasn't the most dangerous thing her family faced. Being visible was. The news hit every station by 5:30 p.m. Meredith's face filled television screens across the Twin Cities. Hell's Angels rescue kidnapped prosecutor's son. 7-year-old girl's hearing saves life. Philip Graves reunited with parents at Regions Hospital, listed in critical but stable condition. By 6 p.m., Jennifer's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Almost let it go to voicemail like she did with bill collectors and spam calls. But something made her pick up. Maybe instinct. Maybe desperation. "Hello?" Silence, then breathing. Then a voice, male, cold, electronically distorted. "We know who your daughter is." Jennifer's blood froze. "What?" "We know where you live. 1847 Marion Street, apartment 3B. We know she goes to Benjamin Banneker Elementary. We know you work at Sunrise Senior Living." The voice paused. "Witnesses don't live long, Jennifer." The line went dead. Jennifer sat on her couch in their tiny apartment, 2 bedrooms, peeling paint, radiator that clanked all winter, the place they'd moved to after losing the house and felt the world collapse. Meredith was in her bedroom, drawing pictures of motorcycles with crayons that were worn down to nubs. Safe, innocent, completely unaware that saving a life had made her a target. Jennifer's hands shook as she pulled out the business card Bear had given her. Just a phone number. No name, no explanation. She dialed. It rang twice before a voice answered. Deep, calm, familiar. "This is Iverson." Jennifer's voice cracked. "They called me. They know where we live. They know about Meredith's school. They said she couldn't finish, couldn't say the words out loud. They said witnesses don't live long." Iverson's response was immediate. "Are you home right now?" "Yes." "Pack a bag. Enough for 3 days. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Don't post on social media. Don't call family." His voice carried the authority of someone who'd evacuated civilians from war zones. "In 20 minutes, 3 bikes are pulling up to your building. You and Meredith are coming with us." "Where?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't find you. Jennifer looked around the apartment, their home, their few possessions, the life she'd built from nothing after Marcus died. I can't just leave. I have work tomorrow. Meredith has school. I can't. Jennifer. Iverson's voice softened, but lost none of its steel. Your daughter saved a life today. That made her a hero. But it also made her a problem for people who kill problems. So you have two choices. Stay here and hope they're bluffing, or trust the people who showed up when it mattered. Jennifer closed her eyes. Remembered Marcus saying once that the hardest part of being poor wasn't the lack of money, it was the lack of choices. You couldn't afford to take risks because one wrong move destroyed everything. But staying felt like the bigger risk now. 20 minutes? 19 now. Iverson paused. And Jennifer, your daughter's not just a witness. She's family now. Hell's Angels protect family. The line went dead. Jennifer stood, walked to Meredith's room, and found her daughter holding up a drawing. Mommy, look. I drew the man who listened to me. The picture showed a massive figure on a motorcycle, Iverson, recognizable even in crayon form, with a small girl beside him. Above them, in Meredith's careful 7-year-old handwriting, heroes come in all sizes. Jennifer's throat tightened. Baby, we need to pack some clothes. We're going on a little trip. Where? Meredith asked, excitement replacing the exhaustion that usually lived in her voice. Somewhere safe. Are the bikers coming? Yes. Meredith grinned, the first real smile Jennifer had seen in months. Good. I like them. They listen. 19 minutes later, 3 Harleys pulled up to the Marion Street apartment building. Iverson, Bear, and Wrench. Jennifer and Meredith came downstairs with one duffel bag and a backpack, everything they owned that mattered fitting into luggage that had seen better years. Neighbors watched from windows, judging, assuming, whispering about the widow who'd just gotten involved with bikers. Jennifer didn't care. For the first time since Marcus died, someone was protecting her family. Meredith climbed into the sidecar attached to Wrench's bike, helmet too big for her head, grinning like this was the adventure she'd been waiting for. Jennifer rode behind Iverson, holding on as they pulled away from the apartment, the city, the life that had been slowly killing them through poverty and invisibility. They rode north on I-35, past Street. Paul passed the suburbs into rural Minnesota where the trees grew thick and the roads grew empty. 40 miles out, they turned onto a gravel path that led through a forest so dense it swallowed the moonlight. And at the end of that path sat a house, 2 stories, surrounded by woods, lights on, safe. The Hells Angels safe house, a place the West Side crew would never find. A place where a 7-year-old girl who'd saved a life could sleep without fear. Iverson dismounted and helped Jennifer off the bike. Welcome home. The safe house wasn't what Jennifer expected. She'd imagined something rough, bare walls, sleeping bags, the kind of place men on the run would hide. Instead, she found a fully furnished cabin with a kitchen that smelled like coffee, bedrooms with actual beds, and a living room with a fireplace already crackling. A woman in her 50s, grey-haired, kind-eyed, wearing a Hells Angels old lady vest that read Maggie, greeted them at the door. You must be Jennifer and Meredith. I'm Maggie, Iverson's wife. Jennifer blinked. Somehow, she'd never imagined the intimidating biker president having a wife who looked like someone's grandmother. Maggie smiled like she heard that thought often. Come on in. I made soup. You both look like you haven't eaten in days. She wasn't wrong. Jennifer couldn't remember her last full meal. Meredith sat at the kitchen table, eyes wide, eating homemade chicken soup like it was Thanksgiving dinner. Maggie sat beside her, asking gentle questions about school, favorite colors, what she liked to draw. Not intrusive, just present. Meanwhile, in the living room, Iverson briefed Jennifer on the situation. Philip's father, David Graves, is prosecuting the West Side crew for racketeering, drug trafficking, and 2 murders. Trial starts Monday. The crew kidnapped Philip to force him to drop charges. Iverson's jaw tightened. When that didn't work, they left the boy to die. Message sent. But Meredith heard him, Jennifer whispered. And now they want to silence her. They want to try. They won't succeed. Iverson leaned forward. Here's what's happening. Street, Paul PD has increased patrols near your apartment. Not that you're going back there yet. FBI is involved now because it's a federal case. David Graves wants to meet you and Meredith personally to thank you. I don't want thanks. I want my daughter safe. Same thing in his mind. You saved his son. That makes you family to him, and family protects family. Jennifer looked toward the kitchen where Meredith was laughing at something Maggie said, a sound Jennifer hadn't heard in months, maybe years. How long do we stay here? As long as it takes. Days, weeks, however long until the trial's over and the crew's locked up. Iverson paused. We've got brothers rotating shifts, 24-hour security. Nobody gets within a mile of this property without us knowing. I can't pay you for this, Jennifer's voice broke. I can barely afford groceries. We're not asking for money. Iverson's expression softened. Your daughter saved a life today. That's currency in our world. You don't owe us anything. We owe her. That night, Meredith slept in a real bed with clean sheets and a quilt that smelled like lavender. Jennifer sat in the guest room, looking at the business card she still carried, trying to understand how her life had flipped in 12 hours. Morning brought new problems. Jennifer called her boss at Sunrise Senior Living, explained she had a family emergency and needed a week off. Unpaid, obviously. Her boss was understanding but firm. If she wasn't back by next Saturday, they'd have to let her go. She called Meredith's school, said Meredith was sick. The secretary asked if she needed a doctor's note. Jennifer said she'd provide one, a lie she'd figure out later. By 10 a.m., the reality settled. Staying safe meant losing income they couldn't afford to lose. Iverson found her on the porch, staring at the woods, calculating impossible mathematics. You're thinking about work. I'm thinking I'm about to lose my job, and if I lose my job, I lose our apartment, and if I lose our apartment, we're homeless. So yes, I'm thinking about work. Iverson sat beside her. David Graves is offering compensation, witness protection funds, enough to cover your rent and then some. Jennifer shook her head. I don't want charity. It's not charity, it's justice. His kid is alive because of yours. That's worth something. Everything's worth something, Jennifer said bitterly. I just never have enough to pay for it. Iverson was quiet for a moment. Then, you know what I learned in Afghanistan? That the richest people aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones with the most people who'll show up when they need help. He gestured toward the cabin. You've got 12 Hells Angels who just cleared their schedules to make sure your daughter stays alive. That's richer than most Americans will ever be, Jennifer wanted to argue. Wanted to insist she could handle this alone, but alone had been killing her for 2 years. Maybe it was time to let people help. Inside, Meredith was teaching Maggie how to draw motorcycles. Outside, 3 bikers patrolled the property. And somewhere in the Twin Cities, the West Side crew was learning that the little girl who'd heard their secret was now protected by an army they couldn't touch. The threat came on Tuesday. Jennifer's old phone, the one she'd left behind at the apartment, forwarding calls to a burner Iverson had given her, received a text at 3:47 a.m. Bear, monitoring the old phone from the safe house, saw it immediately and woke Iverson. The message was simple: you can't hide forever. Attached was a photo, Meredith's elementary school, taken that morning, proving they were watching, waiting. Iverson showed Jennifer at dawn. She went pale, hands trembling as she held the burner phone, staring at the image of Benjamin Banneker Elementary, where her daughter should have been walking through doors at 8:15 a.m., unaware that predators were circling. They're at her school, Jennifer whispered, watching for her. They're fishing, Iverson corrected. They don't know where you are. They're hoping to scare you into making a mistake. It's working. Iverson's voice hardened. Then we make them make a mistake instead. By 9 a.m., Iverson had coordinated with Street Paul PD and FBI. By 10 a.m., undercover officers were stationed around the school. By 11 a.m., they had eyes on 3 West Side crew members sitting in a Chevy Tahoe with tinted windows, parked across from the playground, watching children like hunters watching prey. The police didn't move. Not yet. Because watching wasn't illegal. Waiting wasn't a crime. They needed the crew to act. At 3:15 p.m., school let out. Children poured onto the playground, laughing, running, innocent. The Tahoe's doors opened. 2 men stepped out. One pulled out a phone, scrolling through photos, comparing faces of children to images they'd pulled from social media and news coverage. Looking for Meredith, but Meredith wasn't there. She was 40 miles north, safe in a cabin, teaching Maggie how to play Go Fish, while Jennifer paced and prayed and tried not to think about what would have happened if she'd ignored Bear's warning. At the school, one of the men approached a little girl with blonde hair, not Meredith, but close enough that he had to check. He leaned down, smiled, asked if her name was Meredith. The girl screamed. Teachers rushed over. The man held up his hands, backing away, claiming he'd made a mistake, but it was too late. Undercover officers moved in. FBI. Hands where we can see them. The arrest happened fast. Handcuffs, Miranda rights, news cameras that seemed to materialize out of nowhere because somebody had tipped off the media. By 5 p.m., the story was everywhere. West Side crew members arrested attempting to abduct witness in federal kidnapping case. Jennifer watched the news from the safe house, Meredith curled beside her, oblivious to how close danger had come. Iverson stood in the doorway, phone to his ear, coordinating with David Graves. When he hung up, his expression was grim. 2 arrested. But there's at least 5 more crew members still loose, and the leader, Tyler Vance, hasn't been touched. So it's not over, Jennifer said. Not even close. Iverson walked to the window, looking out at the forest that surrounded them. David wants you to testify, not just about finding Philip, but about the threats, the phone calls, the texts. He wants to build a witness intimidation case on top of the kidnapping. They'll kill us. They'll try. We'll stop them. Iverson turned back. But Jennifer, you need to understand something. If you testify, you're not just saving Philip. You're helping put away a crew that's been terrorizing Minneapolis for a decade. You're giving other witnesses courage to come forward. You're changing the game. Jennifer looked at Meredith, who'd fallen asleep against her shoulder, exhausted from a childhood that should have been simpler. I don't want to change the game. I just want my daughter safe. Sometimes, Iverson said quietly, the only way to be safe is to stop hiding. That night, Jennifer lay awake in the guest room, listening to Meredith breathe, thinking about Marcus. About how he'd always said courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was doing what needed doing despite the fear. About how he'd taught Meredith to speak up, to notice things, to never be silent when silence meant someone got hurt. He'd raised a daughter who saved lives. Maybe it was time for Jennifer to prove she could be brave too. At 2 a.m., she texted Iverson, I'll testify. Tell David I'm in. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed. Iverson's response, Hell's Angels will be there every step. You're not alone. For the first time in 2 years, Jennifer believed it. The plan was simple but required precision. Jennifer would travel to the federal courthouse in downtown Minneapolis to give her deposition testimony that would be used in the West Side crew trial and in the separate witness intimidation case being built against them. The FBI wanted her there by 10 a.m. Thursday. Iverson wanted her alive when she arrived. Wednesday night, 12 Hell's Angels gathered at the safe house for what Iverson called a movement brief, military terminology for coordinating a convoy through hostile territory. Because that's exactly what downtown Minneapolis had become. Bear spread a map across the kitchen table. 3 routes from here to the courthouse. Highway 35 is fastest but most exposed. County roads are slower but harder to intercept. Back roads through still water add 40 minutes but keep us off predictable paths. Wrench tapped the map. Crew knows Jennifer's testifying. They'll be watching the courthouse. Might try something at traffic lights, parking ramps, anywhere we're forced to stop. Chains, the club's enforcer, 6'2", arms like tree trunks, cracked his knuckles. Then we don't stop. Iverson nodded. Jennifer rides with me. Meredith stays here with Maggie and Doc. Perimeter security doubled. 4 bikes in formation, Bear leads, Wrench and Chains flank, Preacher sweeps. We move fast, stay mobile, communicate on encrypted radios. Jennifer listened from the doorway, heart pounding. This wasn't a ride to the courthouse. This was a military escort through enemy territory. Thursday morning came cold and grey. Minnesota autumn settling in with the kind of wind that cut through jackets. Jennifer kissed Meredith goodbye, promising she'd be back by dinner. Meredith held up her latest drawing. Bikers surrounding a little girl, protecting her. "You're gonna be okay, Mommy. The bikers keep promises." Jennifer prayed she was right. The convoy left at 8:15 a.m. 5 Harleys in diamond formation. Iverson at the center, with Jennifer holding on tight, engines roaring through the forest before hitting County Road 5 South toward the city. They took the Stillwater route slower, winding through small towns where stoplight delays were measured in seconds, not minutes. Iverson's voice crackled over the radio. "Eyes up, stay tight." For 30 minutes, the ride was smooth. Then Bear's voice, "Possible tail, black Escalade, 2 vehicles back, been with us since Forest Lake." Iverson's response was calm. "Confirm make and plates. Minnesota plates, DXR 4739, tinted windows. Can't see occupants." Wrench's voice, "Could be coincidence." "Could be." Iverson agreed. "Or it could be a scout vehicle. Stay sharp." The Escalade followed them for another 5 miles. Then, as they approached downtown street, it accelerated, pulling alongside the convoy. The back window rolled down. Jennifer saw it before anyone else. A gun, not pointed yet, just visible. A message. Iverson saw it too. "All units, evasive, now." The convoy split. Bear and Preacher peeled left, drawing the Escalade's attention. Iverson, with Jennifer, went right, accelerating through a gap in traffic that shouldn't have existed, but did, because timing and luck sometimes saved lives. Chains and Wrench boxed in the Escalade, slowing it down, preventing pursuit, while radioing Street Pole PD with the plates. 3 blocks later, police intercepted the SUV. 2 men inside, both with outstanding warrants, both connected to the West Side crew. Jennifer didn't see the arrest. She was already at the federal courthouse, surrounded by FBI agents and Hell's Angels, walking through metal detectors and security checkpoints into a building designed to protect people the world wanted silenced. Her deposition took 4 hours. She told them everything. The phone call, the texts, the photo of Meredith's school, the fear that had defined every moment since her daughter's face appeared on the news. David Graves sat in the room, mid-40s, expensive suit, exhausted eyes. When Jennifer finished, he stood and extended his hand. "Miss Webb, my son is alive because of your daughter. And you're here, risking everything because you believe justice matters. I can't repay that. But I promise you the West Side crew will never hurt another family." Jennifer shook his hand. "Just keep your son safe. That's all I want." "That's all any parent wants," David said quietly. "And thanks to you, I get to." By 3 p.m., Jennifer was back at the safe house, Meredith running into her arms like she'd been gone for years instead of hours. Iverson stood on the porch, phone to his ear, listening to updates from Street Pole PD. When he hung up, he smiled, rare for him. The 2 men in the Escalade are talking, giving up locations. Safe houses, names. FBI's about to execute raids across the Twin Cities. "It's over?" Jennifer asked. "Not yet, but it's ending." That night, news broke. FBI raids West Side crew operations. 7 arrested, evidence seized. Tyler Vance, the leader, still at large, but now a fugitive with nowhere left to hide. America watched. Minnesota celebrated. And Jennifer Webb realized that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was tell the truth, but it was also the only thing worth doing. Tyler Vance was arrested 72 hours later at a truck stop outside Duluth, trying to flee to Canada. He'd been on the run for 3 days, burning through cash and contacts, learning that when the FBI wanted you, geography didn't matter. The arrest was anticlimactic, no shootout, no dramatic chase, just a tired man who'd run out of options, getting handcuffed at a pilot travel center while buying gas station coffee. But what happened next wasn't anticlimactic at all. David Graves called Jennifer personally. "We've got him, Vance, plus 14 other crew members, RICO charges across the board. The trial's a formality. Now we have testimony, evidence, and cooperating witnesses. They're done." Jennifer felt something, release in her chest tension she'd been carrying for 2 weeks, 2 years, maybe her entire life. "So it's safe? We can go home?" David hesitated. "Legally, yes. The immediate threat is neutralized. But Jennifer, I want to propose something else." "What?" "Testify publicly. Not just depositions. At the trial, let America see the face of the mother whose daughter saved my son. Let them understand what courage looks like." Jennifer's stomach dropped. "That makes us targets forever. Every criminal who wants revenge, It also makes you untouchable," David interrupted. "Martyrs are dangerous, but witnesses who go public, who refuse to hide, they become something else. They become symbols. And hurting symbols brings down heat nobody wants." Iverson, listening from across the room, nodded slowly. It was counterintuitive, more visibility as protection. But it made sense. Shadows were where predators hunted. Sunlight was where they died. Jennifer looked at Meredith, coloring at the kitchen table, oblivious to the decision being made. "If I do this, she's safe? Forever?" "I can't promise forever," David admitted, "but I can promise that every law enforcement agency in Minnesota will be watching, and so will the Hells Angels." He paused. "You saved my family. Let me help save yours." Jennifer closed her eyes and thought about Marcus again, about what he'd say if he were here. She already knew. He'd tell her to do what scared her, because that's where growth lived. "Okay," Jennifer said. "I'll do it." 1 week later, Jennifer Webb sat in federal court, wearing a suit Maggie had bought her, holding Meredith's latest drawing for courage, and told her story to a jury of 12 Americans who'd been selected to decide whether the West Side crew would spend the rest of their lives in prison. She described the phone call, the threats, the photo of the school, the fear of every mother who'd ever loved a child and known the world was dangerous. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Tyler Vance, sitting at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, stared at her with hatred so pure it should have been illegal. But hatred didn't matter anymore. Evidence did. Testimony did. Justice did. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Tyler Vance, life without parole. His lieutenants, sentences ranging from 25 to 40 years. The West Side crew, which had terrorized Minneapolis for over a decade, was dismantled. And the little girl who'd heard crying when nobody else listened became a symbol across America of why children's voices matter. But the real story, the one that didn't make headlines, happened after the trial. David Graves established a fund for Jennifer and Meredith. Not charity. Compensation for witness testimony, victim assistance, restitution for trauma. Enough to pay off their debts, cover rent for 2 years, and give Meredith a college fund that would have made Marcus cry with pride. The Hells Angels offered something else, not money, family. Iverson stood in the safe house living room, the place that had protected them for 3 weeks, and made an offer. "This house sits empty most of the year. We use it for emergencies. You staying here? That's not an emergency anymore. That's just good sense." Jennifer shook her head. "I can't accept." "You can," Maggie interrupted, appearing with coffee like she always did, "because you're not accepting charity. You're accepting family, and family doesn't charge rent." Tears filled Jennifer's eyes. "Why?" Why would you do this? Iverson's answer was simple. Because your daughter saved a life. And because Marcus, your husband, he was a union carpenter, right? Jennifer nodded, confused. He helped build the VA hospital in Street Cloud. I was there getting treatment for PTSD after Afghanistan. The crew he worked with treated me like I mattered. Didn't know I was a biker. Didn't care. Just saw a veteran who needed respect. Iverson's voice softened. Marcus saved me in a different way. This is how I return the favor. Jennifer's breath caught. She'd never known. Never realized her husband had crossed paths with the man who'd save her daughter's life years later. Sometimes the universe didn't make sense, and sometimes it made perfect sense. They stayed. Not forever, but long enough for Jennifer to save money, long enough for Meredith to heal from trauma she was still too young to fully understand. Long enough for the Hells Angels to become not just protectors, but uncles, aunts, grandparents in leather. Long enough for temporary to become home. 6 months later, Philip Graves celebrated his 4th birthday at Chuck E. Cheese in Bloomington, Minnesota. The party was loud, chaotic, and filled with children who'd never know how close one of them had come to not being there. But Jennifer knew, and David knew, and Iverson knew. Philip ran up to Meredith, who'd been invited as the guest of honor, and hugged her legs with the uncoordinated enthusiasm of a toddler who'd learned that hugs were how you said things words couldn't. You saved me, Philip said, practicing the sentence his parents had taught him. You heard me when I was lost. Meredith knelt down, eye level, the way Iverson had taught her. I'll always hear you. That's what friends do. Rebecca Graves, Philip's mother, pulled Jennifer aside while the kids devoured pizza and played games that cost too many tokens. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Jennifer said. Knowing Philip's okay, that's enough. It's not enough, Rebecca insisted. David and I have been talking. We want to establish a foundation, the Meredith Webb Foundation for Missing Children, funding search efforts, supporting families, training volunteers to listen, really listen when kids report things adults ignore. Jennifer's throat tightened. That's beautiful. It's necessary. Your daughter proved that children see and hear things we miss. If we'd listened sooner to kids reporting strange cars, weird adults, anything, maybe Philip never disappears in the first place. Rebecca's eyes filled. Let us do this. Let Meredith's name mean something, Jennifer agreed, because making meaning from trauma was how you survived it. The foundation launched 3 months later. By year's end, it had helped locate 4 missing children, funded 12 search operations, and trained over 200 volunteers in child-centered listening techniques. Meredith's face appeared on promotional materials not as a victim, but as a hero. The little girl who heard what adults missed. At the Foundation's 1-year anniversary gala, held at the Hilton in downtown Minneapolis, Meredith stood on stage wearing a dress that actually fit and shoes without holes, holding a microphone that was too big for her hands, and spoke to a room full of adults who'd paid $500 a plate to hear her. My teacher once told me I pay too much attention to things, that I should focus on my own work and stop listening to stuff that doesn't matter. Meredith's voice was small but clear. But when I heard Philip crying, that mattered, and if I hadn't been listening, he'd be gone. She paused, looking at the audience. So I think maybe paying attention is good. Maybe if more people listened instead of ignored, less kids would get hurt. The room erupted in applause. Jennifer cried. David and Rebecca cried. Hell's Angels in the back of the ballroom, uncomfortable in suits, but present because family showed up, stood and gave Meredith the 2-finger salute, the biker promise. Later, outside the hotel, Iverson found Meredith sitting on a bench, staring at the city lights of Minneapolis. You okay, kiddo? I'm scared, Meredith admitted. What if I stop hearing things? What if next time I don't notice? Iverson sat beside her. You know what I learned in the army? That courage isn't about being right every time. It's about speaking up when you see something wrong, even when you might be wrong. You did that. And you were right. But even if you'd been wrong, you'd still be brave. Really? Really? Iverson pulled something from his pocket, a patch, small, designed for a child's jacket. It showed a wolf with enhanced ears hearing what others couldn't. Below it, words. Meredith Ers, Webb, Honorary Hell's Angel. This is yours, earned, not given. You saved a life. You testified against evil. You inspired a foundation that'll save more lives. That's family. That's brotherhood. Meredith took the patch with reverence, running her fingers over the stitching. Can I wear it? You better. You represent us now. He helped her pin it to her jacket, the same white jacket she'd worn the day she heard Philip crying, now patched and mended and transformed into something sacred. They stood, looking at the city together, a former Army Ranger turned biker president and an 8-year-old girl who'd learned that small voices could carry thunderous truth. Iverson? Meredith asked. Yeah? Do you think my dad would be proud? Iverson remembered Marcus, the carpenter who'd treated veterans with dignity, the man who'd raised a daughter brave enough to speak when silence was easier. I know he would be, because you're exactly who he hoped you'd become. They walked back inside together. Jennifer was waiting, talking with David about the Foundation's next initiative. Maggie was coordinating with other Hell's Angels' wives about volunteer shifts. The gala continued. And across Minnesota, in homes and schools and parks where children played, parents started teaching a simple lesson. When a child says they see or hear something, you listen, because sometimes the smallest voices save the biggest lives. Meredith Webb had proven that. And the Hell's Angels of Minnesota had shown America that family wasn't about blood or leather or how much money you had. It was about showing up when nobody else would. It was about listening when everyone else ignored. It was about protecting the vulnerable, even when, especially when it cost you something. That was brotherhood. That was justice. That was what happened when a 7-year-old girl tugged a biker's vest and asked one simple question, "Wait, do you hear that sound?" The answer had saved a life, built a foundation, changed a family, and reminded America that heroes really do come in all sizes. If you believe that children's voices matter and that listening when everyone else ignores can save lives, like and share this story. Subscribe now for more stories of courage, brotherhood, and the kind of heroes who hear what others miss. Also, check out the 2 videos showing on the screen right now, specially crafted for you.